Hi, good afternoon. Before this lecture, I would like to thank you, all of your attendance, especially today. I know it's very not convenient to come over without the public transport. And so in today's event, firstly, we want to impress on the 28th February incident happened in Taiwan, Ostasienwissenschaften. And secondly, we'd like to acknowledge the founding of Taiwan newspaper, Taiwan People News. It's founding 100 years ago. And Kuan-Wei and I just organized this talk about the two different newspapers. Taiwan People News and the People News. There are two different newspapers, and but both presenting the press freedom bravely during their special term. And we would like to introduce the process of press freedom, or say speech freedom challenge in Taiwan. During the early and the middle 20th century. So move on to my section in order to this one. So in order to correspond the current news in Europe, especially like today's strike, and I'm going to show how Taiwan People News being established and reported strikes, as well as the workers' voices under Japanese rules in 1920s. And there are two parts in my talk. And first of all, I would like to talk about Jiang Weishui's story. Dr. Jiang was one of the important founder of Taiwan People News. After that, the development of Taiwan People News will also be addressed. And I will centralize a case of strike news by printing workers in Taipei in 1927. And I hope you will enjoy this contents or understand more the history of Taiwan during the colonial period. So, who is Jiang Weishui? He was born in 1891 in Yilan, which is a small county in northeast side of Taiwan. And his father was just Fulton tailor, and his family was not very rich. And there was a dramatic change in when he was 4 years old. In 1895, as you know, after the end of the Sino-Japanese War, Qing government ceded Honghu Island and the Taiwan Island to Japan. This caused many Taiwanese people to rise up in opposition. And so Mr. Jiang was studying in traditional Chinese system in a private school. And so until he was 16, he finally enrolled in official primary school. And after that, in here, I think, he was learning very fast and well, and also realized the importance of the modern education, And in 1910, he was admitted to the government School of Medicine in Taipei with the first grade. And after 5 years study, he successfully graduated with the second place in the class in 1950. And he had an internship in a public hospital in Milan. So he back to his country and in 1950. And yeah, I would like to show the picture. This is the governor school of medicine in Taipei. He changed the name to Taipei 医学校. And I do like this photo because you can see unlike the standing still or still the group picture, the photos, every student here, you can see that they just show his personality and confidence. So it's like Dr. Zhang, during his learning time in medical school, he had been active into social movements. And after his internship, he moved to Taipei, to Dadaocheng, and set up his own hospital named Taiwan 医院. You might see, show you the Taiwan 医院. The left side, you will see the sign. And his own hospital named Taiwan 医院 in 1960. It means when he was just 25. He specialized in internal medicine and pediatrics, not only a hospital. Yeah. And Dadaocheng, I would like to just introduce Dadaocheng. As for Dadaocheng, also called Daojiang, was an important trading port in the 19th century in Taipei. During the Japanese occupation, Dadaocheng became very flourishing. And okay, so in this video, Dr. Zhang Shenquan analyzed the reason why Zhang Weishui started his career in Dadaocheng. This is a website from Zhang Weishui Foundation, and they made the new animation by all photos. So you can see Dadaocheng Hospital. You will now see the translator. So not only being a doctor, Zhang Weishui, he also bought a restaurant named the Chunfeng De Yilou nearby his hospital. And why he would like to buy the restaurant? Because he would like to get together more intellectuals and businessmen for supporting social movements in the future. So from now, you can see Zhang Weishui was a doctor and the owner of the restaurant, as well as gradually becoming a social activist during his 20s. And this next one will be, this one is a famous clinic lecture here. He described Taiwan as a patient. And point out the symptoms of Taiwan and give a diagnosis to Taiwanese with a 这叫做知识营养不良症 more natural with the knowledge. So how can we cure this problem? And he suggests the prescription are taking formal education, and not only formal education, and more supplemental education, and also to have kindergartens for the next generation, and to build libraries for everyone. Also organize groups for reading newspapers. So, and he used the here is part. Sorry, we cannot point out 极量, so extremely much. For at least for 20 years to change the situation of Taiwan. In other words, education would be the main method to cure Taiwan's problem at that time. So how can how can exactly ameliorate most Taiwanese people's knowledge standards? They decided to establish Taiwan Cultural Association. The two groups, local intellectuals and the college students in Japan, cooperate to promote the importance of Taiwanese consciousness, and to act many anti-colonial movements in every part of Taiwan. So the most important anti-colonial movement is the petition movement for the establishment of the Taiwanese parliament. It was quite long. It's from 1923 to 1934. And even this movement took 10 years, but still failed in the end. Meanwhile, they thought it is necessary to publish on publication to pass on idea in 1920. So in 1920, they firstly compiled and printed Taiwan News, Taiwan 青年, in Tokyo. Those people were helping from the right side. Yeah, you can see those people were helping this publication to print and deliver in Tokyo. But why they had chosen Tokyo, not in Taiwan, because since 1900, there was a strict censorship in Taiwan. Before publication, those contents need to be checked by Japanese government in Taiwan. But then there's two different systems in Tokyo and Taiwan. So in Tokyo, it's not necessary to be checked the contents. So the chance for okay, yeah. At that time, so actually Taiwan 青年was not many Taiwan people seeing at that time. Many people had no chance to read this magazine. So after 2 years, they like to widen up readers, not only focusing on young people. So they changed the name of this magazine to for Mosei in 1923. The Formosa was published every 10 days, and in April 23rd, April 23, and almost 100 years ago, they created this new publication. The second part, the Taiwan Minbao, the Taiwan People News, was a weekly newspapers. at the same time with the Formosa publishing. But as we know, there was a terrible earthquake happened in Tokyo on 1st September 1923. So over 10,000 people were killed in this earthquake, and a large numbers of the houses were burned and destroyed, even the printing plants. So it's not very, it was not going well during that time. So they published these two publications, but it's very hard for them. So they decided to cancel the Formosa, just publish Taiwan People News. So that it was a very bad time. So yeah, to that. So in the end, only the Taiwan People News keep printed, but finally the Taiwan People News was allowed to be printed in Taiwan in actually in, we go back to see. So before the July 1923, Taiwan People News was printed in Tokyo. So after that, it was allowed to be printed in Taiwan by aiding Japanese version. So they can print it in Taiwan. So here, go back to see the here. Okay, so then, so in 1925, the circulation was over 1,000, 10,000 actually, 10,000 for in Taiwan, and without supporting by Japanese government. And you can see this one is a kind of remembering the circulation going high, and ratio carrying the Taiwan People News. And as you can see, it's not easy for just printing daily newspapers at that time. Delivery is another problem at that time. So, but another reason why I like this photo, because it also shows different generation to, I think, join to know these newspapers. Okay, so you can see kids, young people, adults, and the workers here. And as I mentioned just now, so next one will be there were many groups of newspaper reading, especially it's in order to share more ideas and knowledge to people who were unable to read and write. And those events made the Taiwan People News more influent. Also, there are some people we might ignore, of printing workers, and we usually see publications and the printing products, but we might forget printing workers' efforts here. There's one reason why I would like to trace back their history and their voices. So in the next part, why on strikes for printing workers in 1927 will be the next point I would like to tell. So actually before 1926, Taiwan People News focused on cultural events more and reported a few strike news from China. And since Labor Day 1926, the labor movement in Taiwan had been active. The biggest one and the very first one, labor movement in 1927, was holding by iron workers in Kaohsiung, and it's the new city at the time in south of Taiwan. And in Taipei, there was one big strike by printing workers. It's from here, the Taipei Printing Joint Stock Company, located in Yamato. Here, if I say it's Taipei Main Station, maybe you know the area just in front of the Taipei Main Station. It's quite so the owner Kuan-Wei, and he actually they are two, but I don't really know their relationship. They might relate. One was the mining boss owner, and he owned a big miner in Taipei. And another one I just find that he's introduced. He was iron hardware trading owner in Kaohsiung, and he became city. I forgot. Yeah, in Kaohsiung after that, and so that is the report from Taiwan newspaper according to the issue 160, 164, and 166 issues. So according to the report, they say the Funabashi boss was very demanding because he was manager of the miner for miners, so they treat them, the printing workers, very bad. He asked workers to work overtime during busy period, but dismissed them in not busy. So that's the reason why, and they would like to fight. They would like to fight. So the workers' requirement was must inform workers 2 months in advance before admission, and must pay 2 months' wages when the workers just like now. And at the beginning it was very easy requirement, but the boss made it bigger on June 21st. And Funabashi was also a leader of the Taipei Printing Association, so he connected with other owners to deal with this strike. So it's kind of shared responsibility to other owners, and so they hold a meeting, and they had a terrible response to making their working condition worse. So they gave them many conditions, but it's not good for workers. So during this part, and during 23rd to 13th June, after the workers' meeting, they request several benefits, and the list clear. However, those owners reject all. And so they decide it's the formal strike started on 3rd of July. So from this report you can see it shows those workers' speaking rights. Not only this, actually, at the same time, other owner just like they from different industry, they show their sympathy for strikes. So would like to help to they would like to help the workers. So you can see over 200 workers helping to transport sand and soil from the Danche River because another owner gave them a chance to work. So in this photo, you can see they are doing other job, but it's harder, but the nice pay as well. So they join to another work. So according to the report, some of them workers, they was doing they was doing selling food goods at that time and not doing printing anymore. Yeah. Oh. So, it's not a result or it's not a conclusion. So far, it's just my thinking. It's kind of peaceful solution. It's not a radical, and yes, no one was dismissed after this strike. But according to the report, the workers obtained less wages and vacation. It's the end of the result of strike in 1927, and after that, during 1930 to 1931, it became a bigger and a longer strike by printing workers in Taiwan. So not just north side, not in Taipei, it became the bigger. And that is the next step. I'm going to analyze what's the impacts after during this strikes by printing workers, and what are the impacts. So I would like to show you this. This is a report. They say, "Oh, finally solve this problem." And the special part I would like to show you here. Yes, can see here. This part we cannot see clear because this is after censorship. They just would like cancel the part. It's anti-government or it's not good for government or owners. They just cancel this part. It's a special part to understand. Yeah. So okay. Thank you for listening. Yeah. Thank you. Move to Kuan-Wei.
So okay. Let me. Sorry. Okay. So after Dr. Xu's introduction on the Taiwan during the Japanese colonial time, I will follow to the post-war period. From actually, that's the year of the figure later I will introduce on the Mosei, but I will focus on the period of 1945 to 1947. Yeah. So that's the topic. Sorry, for 50s, yeah, the extension. So that's what I'm going to talk about for today's talk. First, I will introduce the chronological in the early coastal Taiwan and the agentum of the early coastal Taiwan, what they're putting on the discourse, or especially the political discourse. and later introduced the emergence of publication issues, which could be considered emergence of the topic she just introduced about the press in the 1920s, where it is called kind of civil society, and later introduced my publication today, 明报, People's News, now 明报, so, and its co-founder, Mosei. So first of all, I'll briefly introduce what happened after 1945. As you already know, that the August 15, 1945 is the surrender or capitulation of the Japanese Empire and the end of the Sino-Japan War. And later, October 25th is called the Declaration Day of the Restoration of Taiwan, and also the Penghu as to the Chinese Republic. So there's actually a transition of powers happening in Taiwan. And later, I mean, that's for me, at least for me, that's interesting. Is like in the year 1946, the Chinese nationalist regime, with the so-called the Chinese Republic, is not actually authoritarian, but having a democratic experiment, at least in Taiwan. So they have local elections for local representatives. So as you can see, starting from later introduced how there are many layers like local elections. Because on December 25th, they have been declared they have to put the Chinese Constitution on practice later in 1947. So that's actually like, after the Civil War, the and the other military rules, and later the Sino-Japan War, they finally realized, okay, that's maybe the high time we should put our constitution into practice in the whole China, and also including Taiwan. So making this Taiwan into transition as an experiment of democracy, at least local democracy. But unfortunately, because like economic inflation, also the problem scandals and corruptions, the disappear were unsatisfied with this regime, at least the February 28th incident occurred. So there's outbreaks there. So but coming with this riot, what I can call the riot, or the annual riot, comes with the military suppression from the Chinese national regime. So that's what be like the March 8th, the Chinese army landing on Keelung, on the north of Taiwan, to the squabbling of the riots. So after that, on May 20th, 1949, is the realization of the martial law of the Chinese Republic, because at the time we will know, like, the Chinese national have to deal with the Chinese communists. So later, like in 1949, December 7th, that's the retreat of the Chinese nationalists to Taiwan because of the defeat of the civil war in mainland China. And in the year 1950, is because of the outbreak of the Korean War and the following statement of U.S. President Harry Truman concerning this undetermined status of the status quo of Taiwan. So that's the basic scenario happening in Taiwan, not only in Taiwan, but also in the whole East Asia. So what they are talking about during this period of 1945 to 1950 is, first one is during the Japanese colonial time, the Taiwanese people are concerned as subject of the colonial period. So they have to reclaim their citizenship. So it's called, they have to be Japanization, and also the re-Singanization of Taiwanese people. That's the first issue, because of the ethnic issue. And the second is I want to talk about the experimental of democracy or local autonomy through the public election. So first is like in the February to March, that's the township. And later come with the bureau and the villages. And it's the larger the county, or then later is the provincial council members. Yeah, there are like layers, upgrading layers of the local elections. And the last is I will call it emergence of the civil society or the public sphere, because like during the 1930s, not only in Taiwan, also in China and Japan, and also in Europe, it's like there's a like seizure of the press freedom. But after the war, the 1940s, the Taiwanese intellectual elite, so I'm trying to bring back to the public discourse into the society. So there are many publications and issues. Also with the Chinese, yeah. So I was just trying to showing off this, like, according to some research, there are about 40 to 50 magazine issues during this early post-war period. And you can see this covers of these magazines. There are like the liberalist, the socialist, and also some culturalists, as you can see. And there are many perspectives, I can say, is by Qi Fan, or like the blues of the magazines. Yeah. So you can see the reds and the blues, and you can probably guess what perspective they are taking. So I will introduce Minbao, the People News. It's like very short appearing of this issue. It's probably 1945 to 1947, and then probably can see that basically following the end of the war, and also the outbreak of the Fakultät incident. As a co-founder is the Mosei or Mosei in Taiwanese. So he was born in 1887, yeah, I don't know, something like that, sorry. So 1947, yeah, it's coming right now, sorry. And what is the stance of the Minbao? Okay, it is liberal and it's pro-Chinese nationalist because it, before the 1947, it gave a lot of faces about the new coming regime. And in the meanwhile, this Minbao called for the local autonomy, implementation, and high civil participation in our sphere. To encourage people, okay, you should focus on what is happening in our society, and there's coming local elections, you should take some roles in it. So, okay, talking about this co-founder, Li Mao, I just keep it short, okay? Okay, he got his master in Tokyo, in the Tokyo Imperial University, and his topic is on Liangming, culture, Liangzi, yeah. Chinese, so he got his master, and he got his PhD at Columbia University, which is in New York, and his dissertation topic is about the public education for Mosei under the Japanese administration, which is published in 1929. So he studied under the supervision of the American pragmatism of Paul Monroe and John Dewey. And this picture, so I just got from the internet. It's not what I taken, and it is carved on the Riverside Church, which is also in New York, just near Columbia University. And as told on the secondary literature, is that Li Mao as a student there, they were invited by the priest, I think it's the priest, to leave their calligraphy on the windows in the church. So he left Mandarin or Chinese characters, some these all these labels, so on the fence, on the window there, yeah. So yeah, there's some, I know some visitors, Taiwanese visitors actually come visit there for taking photos and videos. You can check on YouTube if you like, yeah. So that is basic educational background. So, and he also talking about his social engagement, and he has his roles in academics. For example, he was the Dean of Academic Affairs of the Tainan Presbyterian Middle School, which is a Christian school. And that is for the religious or church part. And for the state part, he is the director of German and English teaching and library affairs at the Tainan High Economic School, which is that the National Tsinghua University. Yeah, that's the top technician Schuler. And okay, so he knows German better than I do. And he's been also that's after the religious or the church or the state part. He's also active in the role in just the just mentioned the Taiwan Cultural or Cultural Association, Taiwan Hua promoting the cultivation of the Taiwanese people, or in some sense enlightenment of the. Yeah, so this is Li Mao. Yeah, he's wearing Japanese clothes, so he has also multiple identities. He was in some views like this one. He used the Western style, and this is the Japanese style. Also, he have used Chinese traditional style. Yeah, that's him. So that's his engagement in the pre-war or pre-Second World War Taiwan, and the post-war. Yeah, the more Chinese one, yeah. he became the professor and the interim dean of the Liberal Arts College, which is the National Taipei University. But this Taipei University is not the Taipei University nowadays. It's a National Taiwan University. Because during the Japanese colonial time, this university is the Taihoku University. So it's Taipei, Taipei in Japanese. But so during this intercession time, they named it as Taipei National Taipei University, but later become National Taiwan University. So that's the difference you should notice. So he was become the dean temporarily, and also he was the co-founder of the director of the Taipei News. Because not only in the academic institutions, but also in the society, you want to raise the knowledge and the consciousness of the Taiwanese people. So how to say? During this incident, this sudden incident on February 28th, he was taken out by some local elites and also the Chinese nationalists from mainland China. He should be negotiator how to solve this riot issue at the time. But it was planned, yeah. So on March 10th or 11th in the midnight, Li Maozhen was taken by armed agents because someone knocking on the door and said, "Hey, we should talk about this. We should having some coffee." And he was disappeared, sadly. Yeah, we don't know that what happened. Yeah, he disappeared. So yeah. So the Li Maozhen. So later we'll introduce from the news clips introducing about attitudes of these people news about. So for example, this is about expectation. This is the 1945 October 25th. At the early visualizations, is like they have really expectation and anticipation about this new visualization, because during the colonial times, these Taiwanese people have faced partial discrimination. So about whether it's like social promotions or getting your career at schools or at the institute. So after the war and during the situation, they expected an impartial recruitment, because like we know that for the Taiwanese people, when you want to have work or job in the public sector or in the enterprises, they want to say there's no discrimination from Chinese people or from the Chinese people. And second is like we're talking about Chinese-nation or signification, because at the time only some elite people can really speak good Mandarin Chinese, mostly Taiwanese or even Japanese. So they asked they should introduce the government should introduce more school teachers from mainland China to give the people to opportunity to learn the Mandarin Chinese. Then is the cooperation between the local citizens in Taiwan and the police officers from China, because as a previous experience, the Chinese people had very bad experience with the Japanese police officers. You've ever seen the movies or the novels talking about these issues, because they're talking about things. And the last is coping at the time, because there's like a post-war period or post-catastrophic period is always like having issues with economic inflations, because there also big depressions. Yeah. So they want the government as putting those items to solve in early recession times. And second, it's also published in the 1947, but in October 29th is like how to have this organization building issues in Taiwan, also in Taiwan. Just following their Chinese compatriots, or say Chinese elites, is like what is liberals, Chinese nationalists, is putting the three principles of the people, also known as the Sanya-Sensi ideology, as the guide of the national spirit. And also on this article, it says having to analyze about the decline of the communist wings in China and Taiwan. That's interesting because we know what happened later, right? So it says 建设思想问题只有三民主义根本. So there's actually taking a Chinese nationalist perspective to rebuild Taiwan. So after it's also later on November 6th, talking about when we're talking about speech freedom. So this is the author I just putting in addition about this intellectual Yu-Yin. Yeah, Yu-Yin is intellectual literati and culturalist who put emphasis on the importance of literature and historical documents relevant to Taiwan studies. Actually, he during the recession or in early 1945, he also put emphasis like there are many documents in the Taiwan governor's office, and there are many documents recording like anthropological or political or social studies on Taiwan from the Japanese perspective, of course. He was, although Yu-Yin was a very inclined to Chinese nationalist, but he also considered those Japanese colonial heritage from literature document should be archived. So that's probable for us who are historical studies nowadays. And that's him, that's Yu-Yin. But he also that's his public critique about the validity of the banning speech, good speech should be also rendered to the good public discussion, because during the Japanese colonial time review, especially in the 1930s, as he concerned is that the suppression of speech freedom also hindered the social development now in Taiwan or in Japan. So that's also caused the bad effects on politics, especially, and he ascribed to that is the defeat or failure of the Japanese empire. So that's him, Yu-Yin, his social comment on this impact. Later, also back to Mosei, November 18, 1945, he's talking about resettling the diasporic Taiwanese people in Japan and its previous occupied areas, because there are like diasporic or wandering Taiwanese people, like in Mosei or in Japan. Then after 1945, the government should take some measures to bring back those Taiwanese, so otherwise there will be diasporic, so it's like settled. Also concerning the issue of citizenship. Later, that's again talking about the speech freedom. December 28th, 1945, it says that's another like reiteration about speech freedom should be considered as one of the foundations of this the constituent state, which is the state of constitutionalism. And so also again talking about the hindrance of public speech or speech freedom in during regimes could be ascribed to the defeat concerning the experience in Japan and Germany. And then it's the 1946 February 7th, talking about the constitutionalism, because at the time also in the Chinese nationalists and also the Chinese elite were discussing how to implement the constitution of the Republic of China. And so they're talking about the Wu Xianzao, the draft act of this thing in the Constitution, Nationalism, and Kuan-Wei. And so, even though they're like Taiwanese society can become a little bit marginal in the Chinese Republic, they're still finding out how we should got more engagement or involvement in the Republic. Okay, about also a public repeating on the press freedom. And this is more of a specific case, because in around February 14 or earlier in the year 1946, at Hualien, which is like the eastern coast, eastern city in Taiwan, there is a scandal or corruption on the rice. Yeah, because the price of rice getting higher, and as inflation, and some issue with the public bill, because like sugar and the rice are like monopolized by the government bureaus, government sectors, and there's like officials corruption or bribery about controlling the price. So that's the scandal. Some other newspaper want to unveil, reveal this scandal, but of course it was like putting silence. We should not talk about this. That is against the government. So Minbao at this article issue that the freedom of speech and press should be in a healthy development, and talking about this issue should well, you can say talking about the elephant in the room should be should be a progress, but in reality, the government pressed down this issue. We should not talk about this. So that is not healthy. So this Minba on this commentary is talking about we should have better freedom to talk about this to make the society better. So as you can see, on economic and social side, the problem cannot be solved. And on the political side, the constraint of the press freedom, the speech freedom still went. So that's the 1946 September 13th, that's governing discontent or dissatisfaction with the government. Because I think that's only from the Hualien, that's an eastern city in Taiwan, just a city, but this problem getting worse. So like it become like a whole Taiwanese issue. It's inflation, economic depression, and also sorry to say this, so suicide cases. But this Minba, they consider that as the voice of the Taiwanese people. We should talk about this now. We should talk about this. So there are many problems now. So you can see that there's they call it Taiwan 社会病态报告书 pathological report on Taiwanese society. There are many issues going on after the war. So we should talk about this, like the life, steal, and public corruption, and says entertainment only favors some certain class. Probably know what happens. And we use this word 朱门酒肉臭 路有20股 means like only the rich people can get what they want, and the average cannot. Only they're starving and dying on the streets. Yeah, that becomes maybe sounds a little familiar now. Yeah. Yeah. So that's 1946 September, and we know what happened. 1947, that's the just having also in Daochen, there's a very, I would say that's a very conflict between the statesman and the citizen concerning trafficking cigarettes, but they become more and more intense on violence and riots and people coming with discontent with